Hello, hello, hello. It is 8 a.m. in the Philippines, but it is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. We want to do these on a weekly basis, and the whole idea behind it is really to give you guys, our followers, our subscribers, an opportunity to interact, in a live stream. Otherwise, we can record these videos in advance, and I can edit them and upload them, as a finished product. But the live stream is intended to be more of an organic, interactive conversation. And so I really encourage you guys to, click into the comments. If you saw the thumbnail, we're talking today about working in the Philippines, how expats find work, how they, whether they're here on a pension or retirement or Social Security or whatever the case may be. If we're able-bodied and we want to, stay productive and have a supplemental stream of income, whether it's, Fields to Phoenix. My wife tried working remotely from Cebu while we were there, but didn't really have any luck with it. Well, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I put out a video a few weeks ago, and that's really where this live stream is coming from, because I got a lot of great feedback both on the YouTube video itself in the comments, but also a lot of private messages and emails that came through asking. So I decided to do this live stream again to make it interactive. Fields to Phoenix, how long ago was that when she was trying to work in Cebu? Was that in the last 2 years, 5 years? I know you just returned back to Phoenix, but what I've been doing for almost 5 years, my history, I have a 26-year career background in corporate IT sales. I worked for a couple of different companies across those 26 years. Oh, well, that's pretty strong. She's a dual citizen and MBA in accounting. But with my background, I'm not going to come to the Philippines and get into corporate IT sales. There's no logical path for that. So what I did was, well, for the first couple of years, we just moved to the Philippines and sort of enjoyed it. I had some other things going on. I had an IT client in the U.S. that's in the solar industry and actually had a couple of, or still has a couple of solar installations in the Philippines. So I kind of became his, feet on the ground here and went to those sites and did some monitoring and some maintenance and things like that. So yeah, so I'm going to get into some of those things because obviously I'm not going to come to the Philippines and step into corporate IT. I needed to figure out a way to repurpose my, 26 years of sales. And I'm going to tell you what I did here in a second, but what I found to be interesting is what I'm doing now. I sort of discovered that I should have been doing this all along. Yeah, I had a really successful career in IT sales. I made a good living and, no complaints there. But what I have found myself to really enjoy more than field sales is marketing. I don't mean to get too deep into that other than to say I sort of found my niche. And as a result of some great relationships back in the U.S., I was quickly able to get 2 or 3 clients that allowed me to sort of learn on them. And eventually now I have a, consistent practice with customers in the U.S. I have 1 client in Europe, and that has just really worked out well. Fields to Phoenix. We got back here and she had a couple of jobs waiting. She was able to find an entirely remote position in corporate real estate accounting. So just to make sure I understand, she tried in the Philippines and wasn't able to get anything going. You got back to Phoenix and now she has a remote position. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. That's just kind of ironic that she wasn't able to get that going, here in the Philippines. But Kenneth, all right, can't find comments. Oh, you found them. I am a native Phoenician. 1942, now living in the Philippines, La Union. Oh, I know where that area is. I've not been there. Thanks for chiming in, Sir Kenneth. Phoenician. Wow. All right. I would ask Sir Kenneth, if you do live in the Philippines, are you working? Just getting along on your retirement, or what's your story? I'd love to hear what your experience is in terms of living in the Philippines regarding work. Hello, Mr. Don. Where are you from, sir? Okay, Phil's to Phoenix. I'm an old construction worker, not a whole lot of... Yeah, well, that's true. Now, I will throw this out there. I am familiar with an American in Dumaguete that he and his wife operate a construction business. And and it's thriving. I mean, they're building, upper scale homes. And as we all know, working or living in the Philippines as a foreigner, it's not easy to work on the ground in the Philippines. And what I mean by that is, we need work visas or working permits or things like that. What I'm speaking to specifically is working for a Philippines-based company. If you're receiving payment from within the Philippines, from a Philippines-based company, we're only allowed to do that with work visas or working permits. However, we are allowed to work for, in other words, like I was talking about myself earlier, my clients are in the US and Europe. We are allowed to, to work and generate income for ourselves. But basically what it boils down to is the Philippines, and rightly so. I mean, I want to make sure I'm clear on this. Rightly so. The Philippines should be protective of jobs for the Filipinos. I mean, they should have first dibs at working, for companies here in the Philippines. So getting back to Phil's to Phoenix and the construction, as I said a minute ago, there's a guy, an American, he's married to a Filipina, and the way they're able to conduct their business legally, from within the Philippines is they have set the business up, under his wife's name, and he's able to operate that way. So Phil's to Phoenix, you're... So you've got an answer for that. I'm retired. I'm a clergy of the Orthodox Church, came here for retirement, lived in Baguio for 6 years, went to Tempe for 1 year, and I can work if I like, but I worked 52 years. I totally understand. Mr. Don, I'm from Minnesota. All right. Well, hang on a second. Let me introduce you. Marty has been living in the Philippines for many years. He was on our last podcast as well. We were talking about Social Security. He has a lot of knowledge and skills in terms of, working in the Philippines himself as an expat, but also as a liaison with companies in the U.S. and helping those companies acquire resources. And I'll let Marty expound further on that. So Marty, why don't you just start there talking about your background a little bit?
I'm old, so I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version of my background with relation to the Philippines and working and such. But I first came here in 1980 in the Navy and loved it. I was on a ship and I said, this is where I want to be. So I got stationed here from 1983 to 87. Now, for those of you who get any of your information from old timers who were, especially people who were actually stationed here in the military, it was the greatest world you could possibly imagine because the bases at Clark Air Force Base in Subic, which was where I was, were essentially little tiny slices of America in the Philippines. So if you lived on base, you spent U.S. dollars. Everything was imported from the U.S. The standard of living was stunning. I mean, I made $1,000 a month, and I had a government house, centrally air conditioned, no utilities. I could buy everything tax-free on the base that was all imported at government expense from the U.S. Unfortunately, the Philippine and U.S. governments could not reach an agreement to continue those bases, and in 1991 they were closed. So that wonderful lifestyle that some people may be telling you to expect here is very, very different, and it requires a lot more work on your part to live comfortably. Now, with regard to work, let me slide right into what kind of work people do here today, and you would be stunned. Gail mentioned something really important, is that if you have skills that, especially skills that they cannot find from Filipinos here, or skills that American companies or European companies or Australian companies would be interested in that you could do from home, the sky's the limit, but you have to find them. And right now I have an arrangement with one single company, and they pay me as a consultant twice a month. I bill them, and that's again, it's something I do entirely from home. The types of things that people can be doing sitting at home could be anything from any kind of consulting that you have a skill in. It could, like Gail said, it could be accounting, it could be some form of teaching. There's a ton of American families who are homeschooling. If you have math skills and you can teach children math, oh my goodness, you can do very, very well with that. But there's all kinds of things. But I can also tell you that I was a VP of what we call BPO here. That's business process outsourcing, if you haven't heard that term. And you probably think of it as a call center. And what call centers do is they outsource mostly answering the phone. So if you've ever called your credit card company or any large business and you've gotten somebody who sounds like a Filipino on the phone, they probably are. They're probably in Manila. And the reason that companies do that is because they pay those people a pittance compared to what you or I would earn for doing the same work in the U.S. But they do.
It's real. No, I was just going to say, having some, firsthand knowledge of salaries, it's really appalling.
It is.
Just to add to your point.
I'll give you an example. Is that the company I was the VP of HR for, we started people at 14,000 pesos a month, which today would be not even $400. It'd be 200 plus. I mean, they're making anywhere from $2 to the really skilled people might be able to get up to $5 a month, or an hour rather. So, but it's an economy.
Let me just.
They can live pretty well.
Let me just add to that because, again, having some firsthand knowledge to that, I was shocked to know that essentially a college-educated individual, we're talking fully educated with a degree, 6 days a week, 6 days a week, not Monday through Friday, 6 days a week, and often 8, 10, 12-hour days.
Yep.
With very little wiggle room, making, starting out at $15,000 or $300 a month salary, or and some of the more skilled set, maybe $25,000 or 30, which would be $500 or $600 a month. But can you imagine going to school and getting an education to make $300? And while it is cheaper to live in the Philippines, it ain't that cheap to live in the Philippines. So I don't know how they do it.
That's an excellent point, because these call centers, most of them, the very big ones that are employed by large American companies like banks and Fortune 500 companies, are in pretty high cost areas by Philippine standards. So if you come over here, you may be looking at what look like American wages, but the cost of living is not going to be significantly lower for you. In that area where I was working, you definitely could pay $1,500 to $2,000 a month for an apartment in a high-rise building. So it's not. There's a wide variety of economies here in the Philippines, but those jobs for foreigners are dwindling. You're really not going to get one unless you can bring money into the company. If you can get new business and you're really good at marketing and getting people to sign up for their service, you might be able to come over here and get hired. But otherwise, they're not going to hire foreigners for any skills that Filipinos have, like accounting or even engineering, because we outsource everything. There are engineers that do work. There are people with law degrees who do the work that paralegals in America would charge $100 an hour for, and they get paid maybe 8 or 10. Anything that can be done remotely, it will be done. So getting back to what foreigners do, though, there's some obscure jobs here. I have a good friend. He just left, and he had been here for 5 years, and he's came here on a mission. I mean, a literal mission. He was an LDS guy, and they sent him to school to learn Tagalog. Coincidentally, he happens to be half Asian, so he looks like what people here call mestizos, half Filipino, half Caucasian people. Although his mother is not actually Filipino, she's Korean. But regardless, he came over here, he learned the language, and he became a professional actor. And he did very, very well. And he is quite famous, but he had to return to the States, for some family reasons. And so you see people doing that. Some of the jobs, I was looking at the screen here, like construction, that's going to be tough. Anything where you're going to compete with Filipinos is going to be tough, because there's just no way that your skill set is going to, if Filipinos have that same skill set, they're going to want, they're going to work for much, much less money than you're willing to work for. You do not want to work here on Philippine wages. Your life will not be enviable at all. So that's something to consider. The other consideration, and there's a fair number of people who do this, is they live in the Philippines part-time. There's some excellent opportunities in other Asian countries, like Singapore in particular. Hong Kong was a great opportunity, but I actually moved here from China, and I would not recommend it right now. That could be an entirely another call. But if you work in Australia, or like a good example, somebody mentioned construction trade type of skills. If you can drive heavy equipment, you can make extremely good money in Australia in the mines. And they will give you 30 days off, like every 90 days. I have friends who live here who do that, and they live extremely well. But you're going to be working 70 to 80 hours a week in a very hot, miserable place and all that, but you can live quite well. So it's all about choices. And I see a question here about building a house. That's a topic for a whole entire broadcast. But if you're looking to work here now, one thing I do want to talk about with whatever skill set you bring here and you want to work on your own from, it's kind of important. Last week we talked about Social Security, which again, it is boring, and this is boring too, but it's important, is the Philippine government is one of a list of countries that has a tax treaty with many other countries, the US and most European countries, Australia, and so on. So the way these treaties work is that if you do work for a Philippine company here, and you pay Philippine taxes, then you will be exempt from. You'll have to report it as income to your own country, like the IRS or whatever. But if you pay one tax, you don't have to pay the other. On the flip side, if let's say you're an American and you work for a U.S. company and they pay you as an employee or 1099, and you pay those U.S. taxes, you won't owe the Philippine government any tax. And anybody who's interested, I can send you a link of which countries are on that list. And it's probably most of the people listening to this are under that circumstance. The other thing go ahead.
Let me chime in real quick. I wanted to go back to Rick Sponge. If I'm saying your name wrong, please forgive me. Do you guys recommend building a house, buying a condo, or just renting? And while this is not necessarily on topic with working in the Philippines, that's okay. This is my opinion, and I'm sure Marty will have his. As expats in the Philippines, we can purchase a condo in our name. Whether you do that for your own personal residence, or you do that for investment to rent out, Or you can do, if you live in the Philippines part time, and then you Airbnb it when you're not here. There's those are some options for you. But for me personally, having a family, I don't want to live in a metro city. I prefer. Marty and I laugh about this all the time. Everybody says provincial. Manila is in a province, but in any case, we live in a more rural provincial area, and I prefer that. And you're not necessarily going to find a condo here, but for me, my preference would be to have a house with some land so the kids can run. Blah 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 blah. So, do you guys recommend building a house, buying a condo, or just renting? I have been renting. I came to the Philippines on a 5-year plan before I established any deep roots in any way, shape, or form. Now, I will tell you, in the first 6 months, I knew that I was going to stay here. But in any case, I'm still renting. My plan is to, buy a piece of property and build out a spread, build my house. But I'm glad, and this is not an excuse or a cop-out, but I'm really, really glad that I have waited almost 5 years, because now I really know the lay of the land. Now I really know the technology. I really know how I want to build my house versus just hiring a contractor to build a house for me based on, typical standards in the Philippines. I now know way better than that. So anyway, I just wanted to respond to Rick on that. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I see one question here again. We're getting back to the Social Security, which everyone thought is boring, but it's from Don, Mr. Don, and great question. One of my less favorite presidents, and I'm not going to editorialize it, actually made Social Security taxable. So how much you get taxed depends on how much your total income is. So if you have no other income, they can only tax up to 85% of your Social Security, if that's all you get. But if you have $100,000 a year total income, you will. It just depends on your tax bracket. So if you're only living on the 2,000 and your 24,000 tax bracket, you can go to a tax table and look at that. So that's a good one. But all right, I see another one here about an MBA. An MBA. It's tough. I would say that if you have really good accounting skills, you're going to want to look for somebody in another country. I mean, you can live in the Philippines, but do the work for somebody elsewhere. And there's lots of opportunities to do that. One of the things, I'll just give you an example of what I do, is I take care of, it's an online retail company, and we sell a wide variety of products. And what I do is I take care of things that don't need to be done by voice. I do occasionally call people, but mostly my fingers are on a keyboard during their nighttime, which is daytime for me. So I'm with, we have 2 children, and I'm able to stay right here in the house. And I just sit in this comfortable little room that I'm in. And they come in the morning, and on a good day, on a good night, a good day for me, most of these issues are taken care of with regard to shipping and inventory, things like that. It's boring, but relative again to the pay scale, and I also get Social Security and military pensions, so it's pretty good standard of living. But standards of living, I caution everybody, if you're going to try to calculate what's the lifestyle you'll be able to afford on a certain income, there's a lot of variables to that here. It really depends on where you live. It depends on how many people you support. It depends on how much you need Western foods and things like that. So the more Filipino-ish your lifestyle can be, the cheaper it's going to be. But the more you want to live in Western-style housing and a place with big, nice air-conditioned malls and movie theaters, and be able to buy cheddar cheese from Wisconsin and things like that, your cost of living is going to get closer to American, honestly. I mean, I can introduce you to people here who make $100,000 a year, and they do not live as well as you might think.
Going back,
yeah. Go ahead.
going back to Rick's comment. Do you guys? No, I'm sorry. Fields to Fix, Phoenix. One you mentioned earlier about she tried Upwork. If you have this is my recommendation. This is a way to sort of get around the initial decline on an Upwork gig, is to list a U.S. address. Just set up your profile based on a U.S. address. Once you are in the interview process, you can say, "Now look, I actually live in the Philippines." I'm not suggesting that we be deceitful about where we live, but essentially, when they are requiring you or preferring that you be a U.S. resident, there's two criteria behind that. One is time frame. They want somebody that's available during their daytime hours, and two, they don't want they're not interested in foreigners, workers, and it's not a what am I trying to say? It's not a prejudice or anything like that. It's strictly, it's just how the job is set up.
It's economics.
Well, it's economics, but I think it's just at the same time is perhaps they don't want an accent, or they don't want there's just certain things, and as a company, so all of that to say, if you are an American, and even if you're a Filipino American, that's okay. You list your Upwork, your Fiverr, your different profiles on your U.S. address, and then once you get into the interview, say, "Look, I am an American, but I do live in the Philippines, but that can be an advantage because I can work blah 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 blah." And believe me, I have 3 a.m. calls at times with my U.S. clients. It's just something I do. I just do. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's crucially important to understand that if you work for a Philippine company that's supporting any kind of business in Australia, Europe, or America, or Canada, your working hours are going to have to be the business hours in the location you're supporting, and that can be quite, it's up to you if you can live comfortably with that kind of a life. I don't like it.
Yeah. And Marty and I have talked a lot about the concept of working graveyards, with our families and things like that. I don't want to. If I do have a 3 a.m. video call, it's the exception. It's not the rule.
Yeah.
But I do try to make myself accessible and available as much as I can.
And on that note, just again getting back to the BPO industry, any of you want to examine it, I'm going to tell you, if you have marketing skills, find another avenue where you can employ that, because if you can show a company the money, they really won't care where you sit and how you go about it. And it is could be any form of sales and marketing. But in the BPO industry, here's what I'm going to tell you. Not only do you have to do that at the business hours of the countries you're supporting and going after, but also that business is going to go away. Two trends are already happening. In the BPO, the business process outsourcing, or call centers.
Okay, business. Okay.
Two important trends is, first of all, artificial intelligence is going to take it over entirely within. Somebody here wanted to come here at 2027. By then, I'd say the chances of you calling an 800 number and getting a human being on the phone are going to be next to nothing. And any of you who think that's not true, try it now. Pick any 800 number for any Fortune 500 company, call it, and see if you actually get a human being to answer the phone. It's highly unlikely. If you do, they used to be mostly in India and the Philippines because of the cost of living and the exchange rate. But what's happening now is the companies that are still sticking with that, because they have so many customers who speak Spanish, and Indians don't, and Filipinos don't. There's not a high demand for customers who can only speak Urdu or Hindi or Tagalog, because those people living in
on that note, let me chime in. With social, what do we want to say with social dynamics being what they are today in the U.S. In terms of diversification, from cultural diversification, from gender diversification, all of these kinds of things. And I'm not getting into those topics other than to say this. Wouldn't right now be the absolute, and I'm going back to Phil's to Phoenix, wouldn't this be the ideal time for companies to, if like in his case, his wife is a Filipino, but she has perfect English and, she can hide her accent somewhat. She has the skills. Wouldn't this be a great time in 2022 with American and all the diversification, the social stuff going on? Isn't this the perfect time for a Filipina to find an American job working in the Philippines? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes. If you can outsource something, especially if you're talking about accounting, for example, the vast majority, I'm going to give you a couple of terms of art here that you would find in the BPO or think call center industry. One of them is very, very important, is the difference between what they call voice and non-voice. Voice means you're on the phone talking to human beings, whether it's, customer service type, or we have nurses who answer medical questions. But the trend is now that people won't continue that contract if everybody who gets on the phone has a heavy accent. And if you live here, your definition of a heavy Filipino accent and my 85-year-old mother in New York is not the same. And that's the customer, unfortunately, my 85-year-old mother, like that. So there's non-voice. Non-voice, that's what I do. I mean, you're typing, responding to emails or data input. There could be, medical coding. There's just tons and tons of work like that. If you have that kind of skill, come on over. Yeah, there's companies, if they're going to outsource, let's say somebody hires a certified public accountant to, do certain tax work or whatever for $100 an hour. If you worked for 1/4 of that here in the Philippines, you'd be earning an astronomical. You'd be in the top 1% of earners in this country. Honestly, that's as a general rule. If you work 40 hours a week, double the hourly wage, and that's your annual wage. So $25 an hour is about roughly $52,000 a year. That's a lot of money here in the Philippines. So it is possible. You got to do the footwork yourself. But getting back to the call center thing is what's happening, and believe me, I'm up close and personal with this industry. Is that the Indians and Filipinos have an accent. Now, people are going to tolerate that when they can pay them a pittance. But unfortunately, for those people here in the Philippines and in India, is that they've also discovered that they can get people with similar English skill levels in Central America now, in Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, and maybe even down a little further in Ecuador. The two big advantages for the American company is those people are bilingual in a language that some of the customers calling will need. That's a huge advantage. Secondly, the business owners can easily travel to those countries. They're not sitting on a plane for 15 hours to come to Manila or Hyderabad or wherever. So that's a big advantage for them. They like to come once a month and see what's going on. You would too if you were shelling out $10,000 a day. So but the other big one is the artificial intelligence is going to wipe call centers with human beings answering the phone almost entirely out if it's just basic, simple customer service stuff. So the only people who are going to remain answering phone calls will be people with higher level skills. Questions like tax issues, medical questions. We hire licensed pharmacists here in the Philippines and pay them $800 a month. People with a doctorate in pharmacy, in pharmaceutical. Go research in America what a PharmD in your local pharmacist gets paid. Probably 90 to 100 grand to work at Walgreens. I'm not kidding. So it's a high level of education. It's the length of medical school. It's not the same.
Right.
Yeah,
Fields to Phoenix. Fields to Phoenix. Even the couple gigs she got over there paid more per week than her sister-in-law makes as a call center manager in a month. That's That's exactly what you. That's exactly what you're saying.
It is it's
Hey,
very
hey,
true, and
hey,
it's
Marty, you got a fan.
uh, curiously enough, it's a little bit longer term, but a friend of mine and I who served in the Navy together, he's about to retire over here, and we have known each other for 40 years, and we have a lot of stories to tell. So it's a long-term plan, but we actually plan on doing probably a podcast together. But we will take calls on anything because we both have a lot of stories to tell, a lot, and I do too. But I try when we're like with Gail is trying to have a particular topic, we'll stick with that. Do you mind if I talk about the next broadcast?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll treat it as a commercial. Yeah.
I'll give you a little, again, the Reader's Digest version of my life and career. I retired from the United States Navy in 1997 as a chief petty officer, and during the last few years that I was serving, I joined with a high school diploma, and I went to school at night for a long time, and I left with a master's degree in labor relations, human resources, and dealing with people and over a long period of time. I worked for FedEx for a while, and they sent me to school at Cornell University. Don't let that impress you. If you've ever sat in an Ivy League class, you would lose all respect for those programs. But regardless, I was an HR consultant, settled labor disputes and things like that for a long time. But I developed glaucoma, and I can no longer travel the way I used to be able to.
Mm.
So I had also along the way been studying Chinese. So I went to live and work in China. And about the only way that most foreigners can get a job in China is to teach English. So I taught English, became an English teacher. And that's how I got hired here in the Philippines as a VP of HR. What they really had me doing was teaching Filipinos, helping them develop an American accent. So that's how I got to where I am now. And what I do now is just, honestly, it's just basic, easy, kind of boring customer service. And the reason I'm doing it is because one of my other best friends from the Navy runs this online retail company. We sell appliance parts, refrigerators, washing machines, stoves. It's very recession proof. And I I went to work for him as a contractor simply because he can't find anybody in America reliable to do it. People quit,
Right.
show up, it's just, and I have an intense work ethic. I'm going to be 63 years old soon, and I work 62 hours a week normally, and I go to the gym every day. So
where is Marty in the Philippines? Marty is in Manila.
I'm in Metro Manila is a province, so there's 7 cities, and I live in Las Piñas, which is the very most southern province.
While you're on that, just talk a little bit about the day-to-day. I mean, your transportation, going to the grocery store. Talk a little bit about your day-to-day, because I think people are interested in what our lifestyle consists of.
Okay. For me, because I cannot drive, in fact, honestly, my vision's bad enough now that I can't even safely ride a bicycle in traffic. So I walk everywhere, mostly. If there's a need to carry big things, then there's a couple different methods. One of them is, I think Gail's mentioned this before, they're called tricycles, a motorcycle with a sidecar. Then they have what's called a jeepney. So what I would do is, if we're going to go shopping and get a lot of stuff, or we're going to bring the kids somewhere, we have an app here called Grab, which is virtually identical to Uber. But my daily life, I get up at 4:00 in the morning. I've been doing that since I was 9 years old, and I work an hour or two and then I go to the gym every day, and I walk. Like I said, I walk virtually everywhere I go, and that's part of my fitness routine.
Mr. Don is asking, what's your cost? You don't have to get too deep into that, but if you have a high level number,
I don't mind, sharing an approximation there. It would be, you wouldn't be able to live the lifestyle that I live on less than 4,000. There's certainly a lot of places where you can live very comfortably on 2,000. There's high-rise buildings in Makati, which is the business center of Manila. It's probably an hour and a half from where I am. And there are one-bedroom, 500 square foot apartments there that cost $1 million US.
Woo,
Donald Trump is the Trump Corporation is they're building a tower there. It's not cheap. The malls there will have Gucci and Coach and so on. It's where most of the rich. Makati is where, as an example, that's where Manny Pacquiao lives.
Okay.
He's wealthy.
Right.
He's also very generous, by the way. Everybody here, a lot of people here, especially if you go to, some of the smaller cities, foreigners ride motorcycles. That's a cheap way to get around, and I just simply can't do it because I can't see well enough to qualify to get a license. However, it's even more dangerous here riding them than it is in America. And it is so dangerous that there is a hospital nearby where I live that specializes in kidney transplants. People fly here to Australia to get a kidney transplant. Guess where they get the kidneys from? Young men who do stupid things.
Okay, I was going to say.
Donated kidneys come from healthy young men who make a stupid decision, and they try to pass something on the left without knowing whether or not something's coming at them head on. These guys will just go around them on the left or the right. They'll go up on sidewalks. They'll do everything they can because they're relying on those things in most cases to get to work, and they wouldn't have that job if they can't get that motorcycle. And they take enormous risks to avoid being late from work or coming home on a Friday, and it's quite dangerous. So if you come here and you plan on getting a motorcycle, if you've never ridden one before, get out there and practice. Take a motorcycle safety course. And, take it seriously. It's
well. Let's go ahead and wrap up.
One topic that we were going to mention, if you don't mind, is I'm somewhat of an expert in, like I said, I try to accent reduction in American English to Filipinos who got on the fence. So one topic, we'll leave it up to Gail to when we do it, is Philippine versus American English. And you need to know the difference because there are certain things you won't understand and there are definitely some things that they won't understand.
It's
a very cool topic. It's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Well, we talked about mannerisms. There's Filipino phrases that don't necessarily align with the English interpretation.
And they don't know that.
Right.
They don't know that you don't know what they're talking about.
There's and it's funny, you and I have been here long enough now that we sort of take it for granted, and it's just another day in the life. But for a lot of guys, I mean, we all know that's not, they're not kissing you. They're pointing, with their lips. Did you know that I made fun of my wife, and I made fun of her in a loving way, and she's a prankster. I mean, she gets me left and right. So don't worry, guys. I'm not, being mean to my wife, but I teased her enough about that till she actually doesn't do it anymore. I'm like, I've actually noticed that she doesn't. Well, true. But it's for example, we'll get into both the spoken language and gestures like that one. That doesn't mean go away. It means come to you. Oh my gosh! I
do that. Okay. First time I did it 42 years ago, I walked away and they didn't get it.
I know. This is hilarious. I was over in Bacolod. Bacolod is, believe you me when I say this, Manila, at least people are trained enough driving to sort of stay in the line, stay in the lanes. You know,
Sort of.
we were talking about motorcycles. No, I get that. But in Bacolod, it is chaos. It is absolute Bacolod, and I've driven in Palawan, I've driven in Manila, I've driven in Iloilo, I've driven in Cebu, I've driven, you know, I've been in Leyte, I've been all over the Philippines driving, and Bacolod City is the worst, takes the number one spot for the worst. Anyway, I was getting ready to turn left into an intersection, which, by the way, I found out the hard way that there's some sort of unspoken and a non-signed for left-hand turns. In other words, they don't like you to make a left-hand turn. And so I'm watching the traffic. Well, the traffic guide does the wave down just like you did a second ago. He does this wave down motion. Well, what does that mean for us? That sort of means slow down or stop or something. It doesn't mean go. This doesn't mean go to me and you. And so I stopped, and he kept doing this to me. Did you know, Marty, he pulled me over. He waved me to pull over because I wasn't minding him. And I'm like, I told him, I said, I don't know what this is. What is this? So yeah, there's so many mannerisms that you know don't translate immediately. But
phrases that
but anyway,
just on you. Well, they're a lot of fun though, and I'll give a disclaimer when we talk about it that for Filipinos that we're not ridiculing your education system or anything like that. It's different.
Yeah.
Even if you went to Australia or UK and you're American, you're going to hear some things that won't make sense either.
Right.
Call you know, something good. They say it's fair dinkum.
Hey, Bradley, congratulations. You know, what is your timeline, if you don't mind me asking? We got 2 or 3 guys from Arizona tonight. I'm saying this morning because it's morning in the Philippines. And Bradley, I'll as a follow-on, you know, if you have any particular topics that you need information on, be sure and let me know in the comments of this video. Once we close out the live stream, it will publish as a standard video. But yeah. Man, there's so many things we can talk about. You know, I get questions on, you know, buying a car in the Philippines or shipping a car to, you know, I get so many questions. And guys, if you will search my channel, there's a likelihood that you'll find a video that talks at least about my experience. You know, I've done videos on shipping stuff to the Philippines. I've done videos on buying American products, how to source. You know, Marty's got it good. He's in Manila, but I'm not. And so I have to get creative when it comes to buying, you know, brand name vitamins, you know, that rather than going to the pharmacy and buying whatever they have. You know, so I've done videos. If you scroll through my channel, you'll likely find a video that talks about, you know, some of the things you're interested in. User error. That's funny. I wish we could do that. I would love it if we were, you know, Back to the Future here. But anyway, I think this is a good time to go ahead and close out. Again, you know, everybody, thank you so much for viewing. You know, share these videos on your Facebook. You know, help us grow. The more people we have, you know, participating and chiming into the comments, the way more fun this is. And Marty and I are both sort of committed to doing this on a weekly basis. So, you know, set your calendar for, you know, Friday nights. And you know, you're kind of the boss. You can let us know what you want to talk about, and we're happy to do it. So you guys have a great weekend.
Like and share it with it.
Yeah.
That's what.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you in the next video. I'm gonna close it out.